to have you involved in that. And here we have a very, very special guest. We're so lucky. So what we wanted to do is hold this virtual online meeting / session, Q&A session, where we can get a fantastic individual to come and talk to you about their career in squash, and for you guys to ask them all the burning questions that you guys want to in relation to squash and maybe some other areas, because she's a very high achieving individual outside of squash as well. So I'll just give you a quick intro. So this is Laura Massaro, MBE. She retired from PSA World Tour in 2019. I've done my research here. So she's a former world #1 player. She spent over 11 years within the top 10. In the top 10. That's an incredible achievement in the world. What else? Won 21 titles. Became appointed an MBE in 2020. Here we have Laura Massaro. Welcome to our call. And you're going to start with a bit of a, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that lovely introduction. Yeah, actually not many people mention that top 10 for 11 years. And it's probably one of my proudest achievements, because a lot happened within the women's game there with the tin lowering and the pointer rally scoring and probably that adaptability and stuff. So yeah, I'm proud of that one. But thanks for having me on. We just had a great session just before this, which was really interesting. So hopefully I'm warmed up and ready to go now, streamlined. So I think what we thought we'd do was that kind of replay one game from one of my British Open matches against Nour Tayeb, who was, I think, 3 or 4 in the world at the time. I did commentary over that one game for England squash. So it's about 8 minutes, but if we stop and maybe just comment on a few things, or maybe I can elaborate a little bit more on why I said what I said, or what I mean by what I said, that would be really good. And just feel free at any point to put a question in the chat or to stop and ask a question. I'm generally, tried to give off the persona of being quite scary and nasty when I was on court, but generally that's not who I am off the court. So I'm more than happy to kind of be here. I want you to utilize the time as much as you can, and feel free to ask whatever you'd like.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right, so I'll start the video. I'll share my screen. Okay, hope you can all see that. You all see that, Steve? You can see that?
Yeah, looks good.
Right.
Have you got the volume on there, Vicky?
No, Vicky, have you got the volume on for the video? When you click share, you need to click that sound button, bottom left. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
So just as I come back on court for the third game of the match against Nour Tayeb in the British Open, 2-0 up with the first game being quite ahead and then just sneaking at 11-9, and the second game being quite far behind, I think 7-2, and winning at 11-9 as well. So feeling quite good, I think, mentally at the start of this third game. Had a good chat with Danny. Obviously kind of in a way annoyed at how the first 2 games went, being so far up and only just winning it, and then so far down and only just winning it. Totally different. And he just basically said to me, stick to the game plan. We had a game plan to try and frustrate Nour in this match, keep the angles down, keep the ball tight on the wall and get in front and volley. And it really, really was as simple as that. And I played well on this day, and I don't think Nor was at her best, but sometimes it's always hard to tell whether someone's not at their best because of the tactical plan that you're employing. And
one of those ones, isn't it, where
yeah, so as we start this third game now, I'm obviously just levelled back at 2-2 here, and as you'll see that as it goes on, I'm really trying to kind of nullify her almost with a mindset of popping the ball around the court a little bit, just putting the ball in really good areas, putting the ball into corners, using lots of height, trying to keep her from getting a grip of kind of any sort of momentum and any sort of shot play. And you can see there I'm using quite a lot of height where I can. The ball's going up towards the alarm sign wherever I'm in any sort of trouble, and you can see that when I didn't do it how dangerous she is. So yeah, 3-3. I guess my mindset is really just thinking kind of stay on the volley, and if I can't volley, take the ball as early as I can. As you can see there, just cutting the ball off and volleying using good height, and putting the ball back into good areas. That was a good volley. It's about using all of my technical kind of ability to just pop the ball down the wall with good shape on the ball, if that makes sense. So it's not kind of just drilled like an arrow down the wall, but faded into the wall. And just as she wants to kind of hit it, it's hitting the side wall at the back and making her go for something a bit wild there on that cross-court nick.
Can we just stop the video there a bit, Vicky?
Really hit a shot, coach.
yeah.
So yeah, just thought it'd be interesting to stop it there, and obviously wanted to just kind of elaborate a little bit on the tactical plan. And you know, it's not always easy to stick to a tactical plan, and obviously with that because comes you sort of have to have the ability to be able to stick to a tactical plan that you're setting out for yourself. So just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into, you know, why I was playing straight. And Nor, as you can see, is someone who likes to open up the court a lot. She likes to be quite flamboyant. She likes to go for her shots and look good. So came up with a plan before the match to try and keep the ball quite straight and quite tight, mainly to frustrate her and to nullify her options. And that's probably something really interesting to touch upon from junior squash perspective, in that if you're playing someone who likes to move the ball around the court, or you feel like things are a little bit rushed, things are a little bit more open than you'd really like, trying to get a little bit of control in a match is really important to think about trying to put the ball on the sidewall, keep it nice and tight, keep it nice and deep. And there's several sort of opportunities within this match where I have got an opportunity to put the ball in short, but I just put it back deep and I use height, like I talked about, put it up by the alarm sign. And it's important to realize why you're doing what you're doing, because to refuse a short ball when the opportunity is there can sometimes be seen as negative. But if your game plan is to frustrate someone and nullify someone's strengths, then that's actually a really positive thing to do. So I think it's important for you guys when you're thinking about a game plan. And obviously junior squash can be quite frantic and it can be kind of fast and furious and you're both reacting. How can you start to think about your own game plan and trying to create yourself a little bit more time and a little bit more space in your head? Because when you've got space and calmness in your head, you generally play a little bit calmer as well. I also just touched upon there about how you can play your lengths into the back, which I think is really important too. So my worry with saying to you guys, play straight, for example, is that can be seen as quite boring. And I sort of wanted to just explain that I guess as a player that I found getting lost in the game plan that I'd set out for me quite exciting. It was like almost a bit of an internal battle with myself, whether or not, if somebody had said to me, you know, can you play straight? Can you hit the ball behind the service boxes? I found that quite exciting and a little bit of a challenge. So rather than seeing it as something that really kind of pins you down and doesn't boxes you into a certain type of tactic. Try to think of it as of being able to express yourself by sticking to a plan, whatever that plan is.
Seeing it like a condition game almost.
Yeah, and also thinking about how you play the ball straight. So when I talked about that fading shot there, it's about have fun with how you play the shot. So we all know if a ball like someone says, make sure you hit the backhand corner, they're weak there. If you hit the backhand corner and the ball sits up, then you're in trouble because they've got options on the ball. But if you hit the backhand corner and the ball sits down, then we all know how difficult it is at every level to dig the ball out of the back corners. So it's important to think about how you hit those areas as well. And definitely, like Steve, like linking in with condition games just is a brilliant way to practice being able to stick to a plan, right? So if I say to you, you've got to hit the backhand back corner whenever you can, if you've done a condition game where you've practiced that, then that's sort of training the mental side as well as the squash side at the same time. It's training your concentration to be able to do that as well, isn't it?
Do you have a favorite condition game which might involve that back corner?
Actually, probably my favorite condition game is a length game with a kill. It's great because, you know, anyone who's seen me play, I am a little bit more of a base sort of length hitter sort of player. I've always had to really encourage myself and really work on being able to not refuse that opportunity short and to be attacking whenever I can. And it definitely got better as I got older. As a junior, I was someone who just liked to thump the ball to the back a lot. And that won me a lot of matches because I was good at it. So the progression was always trying to use the front of the court a little bit more. So that length game with the kill, which by kill, I mean the second bounce has to go behind the line, but the first bounce can go in front of the short line, basically means you still get a little bit of a reward for trying to volley. And then from there, I really like those length game progressions where you can, you know, add in your volley drop, or you can add in a boast, or you can add in the counter drop, or, you know, the drop off the back wall. And that's a great one, like having a length game with a kill, but you can have a drop off the back wall, shows you when your balls are sitting up at the back and not sitting down, because obviously they've got the option. So yeah, I did really like that I did so much condition gameplay, but I think even now that's something that it gets me really zoned in and locked into what I'm trying to do on the court.
Nice.
So let's carry on with the video a little bit, if that's okay.
Very uncharacteristic.
I don't think I've ever seen her hit a service line with a cross-court volley.
See her hit the tin, but
I think they're just at the backhand back corner, just really looking to kind of take the ball early. It really doesn't look like much when you just watch him, but there's two balls there that either could have been let to come off the back wall or let bounce. And it obviously again was another shot that just ran into the side wall, and she's kind of probably panicking a little bit at this point, 2-0, 5-3 down from Tayyeb's point of view, and not really looking like she knows too much what's going on. And I would have been told off for that cross-court drop-off, Danny, because, you know, the game plan is to not let her throw that leg and kind of windmill it off. And it just shows when you do open up the court how she can just get the ball back like she did. And then it was the straight drop that won the rally. And that's what's so important to remember. I kept having to remind myself all the time, play straight, use the front two corners, don't play my flick, which I love to play so much. But Noor's so good at just reading those flicks and throwing the leg and the racket out.
Can we stop there just a sec, please? So when you talk about throwing the leg, and is that kind of taking control of the tee, trying to block you out?
No. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of like really detailed and stuff with Noor's movement. But when we were watching the matches, and obviously I played her a lot over my career. Yeah. There's sort of a movement that she does when she moves laterally, and obviously we know Noor likes to dive as well. And when you dive, it's always generally when you're running from one corner diagonally to the other. Yeah. So we're trying to take, and it was good that you stopped actually, because I was just about to say that, you know, that that whole mindset of taking out one of my favorite shots and not playing my cross-court flick is like, it's important to realize that wasn't necessarily to stop her sort of winning the rally off that. It was to stop her having those good feelings. So because Nor is someone who moves really well laterally, so by laterally I mean moving across the middle of the court, guys, for covering that tee line. When I say someone's not good moving on the straight ball, it's because they've got to move front and back in a straight line, or maybe just go, you know, back corner, back corner, back corner, rather than across the middle. And Nor's really good at throwing her leg out, and on a lateral ball. So you can see me there, I'm moving across to a lateral ball. I've gone left leg, but if I was on my right leg, I'd be able to really throw that leg out and sort of almost slide it. She would slide into it a little bit and put it down the wall. When that ball's running straight down the wall, can you see the amount of space here on the still? That's the space between the ball and the sidewall. When you play straight, you don't have that space. So her leg would go into that space a little bit. So she would have the space to throw a leg and then kind of use that space to move off the ball. Whereas when that ball's running straight, the ball's tighter to the sidewall. She has to control that final lunge a little bit more. And therefore, not only are her options on the ball restricted, but her feelings are also affected. And so this is where it links in a little bit with the mental side, because by stopping her having those good feelings in her movement, she's restricted with like, oh my God, I'm doing great. I'm getting balls back. I shouldn't get back. I'm counter punching. I'm this and I'm that. Whereas I'm arguably being quite boring with my play, but I'm having fun being boring. And I guess that's probably what I wanted to link in with. It's how can you make the most out of the game plan that you set out for yourself? And do you want to win, or do you want to look good? And for me, it was always, I want to win. And so when I'm winning and when I'm playing well, and my little internal challenge of sticking to the plan and trying to play the ball quite straight and keeping the ball on the sidewall and making her play from really difficult positions is something that makes me feel good. And it makes me feel like I'm sticking to my plan. So it doesn't matter that I'm not the one necessarily hitting the winners. It's quite enjoyable to see somebody unravel a little bit mentally. That's a bit nasty, isn't it? But that's the sort of thing that I think, you know, you guys could definitely sort of have fun with and get to enjoy a little bit and start to think about, like, you know, do I want to win, or do I want to look good and be impressive? And then when you've figured that like little internal battle out with yourself, where you put the ball changes a little bit, where you want to put the ball changes a little bit.
Guys, do we have any questions at this point? Probably more based on the game. You can have more general questions afterwards. No? Okay.
Another couple of really good straight balls there. I think it just has that kind of ability to makes the court massive for your opponent when you play straight, and particularly when you're doing it with the volley combo as well. And so from this point now, I've gone from 3-all to 7-3, and I haven't really done a lot. I've just stayed solid, and I've let her make the silly decision, and then maybe just picked her off at the right time. And sort of where the pressure comes from being 2-0 up, and you know, maybe she knows that, you know, from these positions I'm quite good. Don't let people off the hook. And she's gone from being kind of borderline joking and laughing around in the first two games to kind of now getting quite angry at herself. And I feed on that quite well.
So I just wanted to sort of comment on that a little bit, and trying to be a little bit more aware when you're playing and when you're on court of what's going on, not only in the game plan, because obviously there's a chance that someone can change their game plan up based on what you're doing, and then you've got to change, but also being really aware of the change in someone's mood and body language. And I think as squash players, sometimes we can get so bogged down with what's going on in our own mind that you can sometimes miss those little cues that your opponent's giving to you. So for example, there, I've started this match off and gone 2-0 up, and Noor's almost a little bit jokey, a little bit like, I probably can still rescue this. I can dig myself out of this hole I've got myself into. And then it's changed because I've got on a bit of a run in this third game. Maybe she's starting to panic a little bit, and maybe she's starting to think this is going away from me a little bit too quickly, and she's got angry. And I think it's really important to notice that. But to notice it, you sort of have to be aware of it firstly in yourself, but also be aware of that could happen. So it's important for me to not only realize that that's happening, but then what am I going to do about it? Because there's nothing, she hasn't done anything to me. She's just gone from being quite laughy and jokey to being quite serious and quite angry. And what does that mean to me? I guess it means that I need to be extra concentrated in this next phase. It means I need to stick to the game plan even more, rather than maybe feeling like, oh, she's angry, I've got her now. Because as opponents, when you get angry, normally something changes. And if you're 8-3 down, it's probably only going to change for something that's going to, you know, make you a little bit better. So I just thought it was really interesting to say that as juniors, how can you start to be a little bit more aware of what's going on in the match and how people change their own mental state? And are you aware of how your own mental state changes while you're mid-match as well?
That's a really good point.
It makes me very aware when someone's emotional state changes on a match. I'm very, very aware of when someone is behaving how they normally do and maybe behaving out of character, and knowing that I've potentially got them in a place they don't want to be, really. I mean, that was a let ball there, but I felt quite happy with that rally. Couple of really good injections of pace, tight balls. You know, she doesn't really want to be playing them balls, so just happy to kind of replay the rally again. It just shows like her, you know, how good she is around the middle when you just leave it at the front.
Very astute with when to use the reviews as well, Massaro.
Yeah, she missed a trick there.
Really good straight ball there, just throwing the leg again. Looks quite simple, but most people kind of probably would panic there and maybe open up the court. Trying to keep it straight, as you can see. Straight and high if I'm under pressure, straight with pace if I'm not. Just nullifying her here and almost making her feel like she has to do something spectacular to get into the rally, and she's going with me, which is what you'd expect from someone of this quality. Playing straight well, and you know, it's a tough rally this. She's got a lot of balls back, and I think I've done quite a good job of staying straight there, hunting that ball down and not thinking about coming to the back of the court, and then the straight volley is the shot that wins it.
If we just stop that there again.
At this point, I kind of.
So I think that's where I was talking about that recognizing of that change of mood. So I recognized the change of mood, and she still went from 8-3 to 8-5, and that was with me being aware of it. And then that rally was a hard, long rally, and super, super disciplined from me as well. Like, stuck to the game plan throughout the whole rally. And I wonder how much that rally sort of, you know, demoralized her, because she'd won the last two rallies. And if you saw at the end there, I put in that little boast, and she sort of felt, you know, dived in for it, got it back. And it was that calmness and that presence of mind to just put the ball down the wall. And she got up and started to run, and then realized the ball was good. And it was that fading, dropping ball that I just explained. Whereas if that ball had gone in, maybe I'd panicked a bit and overhit it and it sat up, she'd have probably been able to get it back. Rally continues. She's got good feelings. I'm thinking I should have won this rally by now, and it all flips. But she saw that ball dipping away, and she didn't even she got up, made a first step, and then just stopped. And I think it's recognizing, you know, like I just said, that change in mentality from your opponent, but also really changing, being aware of the importance of a particular rally. You know, I've gone from 8-3, it's now 8-5. If she wins that rally, it's 8-6, and it all becomes a little bit more edgy again. Whereas I won it and I'm now 9-5, which is a really, really big difference. So just trying to open up your minds a little bit to recognizing big points, how to stay calm in big points, because being calm basically sometimes, you know, can make the ball go where you want it to go. And when you're panicking, you know, that's when you snatch, or maybe I'd missed my target and put it in the service box and she's still in the rally. So just really important to recognize that.
Thought, without getting too complacent, that might have been the match right there, because, you know, it was a tough rally. She was on the end of it, and I just kept moving the ball around the court, and she'd done a lot of work there, so she's probably going to shoot in this next rally and try and get something crazy. And I did well to pick her off. Another running ball. Camps is laughing. I'm looking out probably a bit like, what are you laughing at? Not over the line yet. And that's the thing I've learned in my career, just make sure that you push for that last point as if it's 9-all in the, you know, in a game. And when you're ahead, it's almost even more concentration, because the last thing that you want to do is lose a lead from this far up. So even more focus to the plan, even more focus to every shot that you play, meaning on every single ball. And there you go. She was actually pretty good at the end of this match, and she said there, as we're just talking, that I got the better of her today, and that my game plan was too good, and maybe she realised how much I was restricting her play and her flamboyancy and the way that she likes to play the game. But Danny and I really set out with this match with a really, really clear but very, very simple game plan. And, you know, that's probably one of my proudest matches in terms of actually sticking to the simplicity of the game plan. And that set me up with a match against Noelle Shabini.
So probably just touching on the last point before we sort of maybe move on a little bit, is just that sort of playing with your mindset when things get quite tight, or when you quite, so I'm 2-0 and 2-0 and 10-5 match ball up there. I think it's important to say that throughout my career, I was always playing with the score in my own mind. So, you know, at 9-5 or 10-5, how do you get yourself to stick to that plan even more when you're, you know, thinking that you're almost over the line? And I think it comes a lot, like what I'm trying to probably pass on is the mistakes that I've made over my career, where I've been up in a game, you know, and we've all been there, haven't we, where we're like 9-5 or 10-6, and then we lose the game and it's gone, and you just, what happened there? And over my career, I guess I've learned from those tough losses and from making mistakes where I've lost my concentration or taken my foot off the gas, how to trick myself into thinking, you know, oh, it's, rather than me being 9-5 up, I pretend I'm 5-9 down. So I'm like, extra concentration, I need to win this next rally because otherwise it's 10. And that, you know, little games that you play within your own mind to pretend that things aren't happening and that you're flipping the score. And, you know, maybe if it's I remember thinking if I'm 2-1 up and say 7-5 up and it's quite close, I imagine that it's 9-all and we're playing to get, you know, I'm playing to get to a match ball. Or sometimes when it's the fourth game, I pretend it's a fifth because I don't want to go to a fifth game and have a fifth game shootout. So it's starting to sort of understand yourself and play those little games with you to stop yourself being complacent, because otherwise that game can go and you're 2-1 and she's confident and you sat in your chair thinking I should have been off 3-0 here, but I'm not. So just important to sort of recognize that you can sort of play around with that, and it helps with the complacency. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that game and just wanted to stop and kind of elaborate a little bit on each point.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Okay, cool. Well, let's open it up to kind of more general questions for everyone, really. Feel free to either just unmute yourself and start talking, or wave at the camera.
I think we've got a few questions that people have asked in advance.
Very good.
So Amy is first on my list. Amy, could you put your camera on, love?
Look, the cameras are off.
And unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. Unmute yourself.
What was the most challenging game you felt you played? Like the most challenging opponent?
Yeah, good question. I think if I had to sort of round up my whole career, it was trying to deal with Nicole David during her peak. So she was, 8-time world champion and 9 straight years at world #1, and she's a year older than me. So I came through the whole of juniors with her, all of my senior career. She was so hard to play physically that, I often say, like, the way that I sort of tackled it in the end, when I started to get a little bit more, when I started to beat her a little bit more, was you knew before you were going to go on court with her how hard it was going to be. And you sort of had to have like a little bit of a chat with yourself before the match that was like, okay, this is, at some point, I'm going to go through a lot of pain physically. My lungs are going to be on fire. My legs are going to hurt. And you sort of have to sometimes have that conversation with yourself about whether you're willing to go through that pain before you go on the court. Because if it sort of springs up on you and you're in a match and then all of a sudden it's really, really hard, sometimes you can't deal with it in that moment because it's actually just too painful, like physically or mentally perhaps. So sometimes when you've had that chat with yourself before, or maybe Danny and I would discuss it before we go on court, we'd say, at some point there's going to be a few rallies where you're going to have doubts. I'm tired, can I stick to my game plan? I'm only at 1-1 and I'm absolutely exhausted. And then when you've had that chat beforehand, you're sort of ready for that when it happens in a match, and you can go, I knew this was coming. You made a deal with yourself before the match that you were going to push hard and push through, and then you can, because you're in that place. And so I think figuring that out was some of the hardest squash that I played, and she made the game really, really physical. If anyone ever saw her play, she was like super fast. She seemed to be able to go forever on her energy levels. And it took a lot of work to break her down slowly. And you had to be at a level of squash that was good enough to take advantage if you managed to get her to that point. So I'd say that was my hardest opponent, and overcoming that challenge.
Yeah, can I just add, in the previous call, Laura, you mentioned that you realised why you couldn't beat her, and how what was that? If you could share.
Yeah, so I was working with a psychologist, when I was really struggling to beat Nicole, and we watched the match together. And at the end of it, he said to me, you don't have a mental problem, you've got a physical problem. And I guess that links into what I said, that he said, when you're fit enough to be able to deal with Nicole's physical presence that she brings when she comes on court, then you've got a chance of beating her from the mental side. But I think it's really important to say to you guys that sometimes you lose a match and you think that you've had a bad performance mentally, but sometimes mental toughness is really linked in with physicality as well, and how fit you are. Because I'm sure you all know, like, when things get really hard physically, say you're doing a set of court sprints, all you can think about is how much pain you're in how much your legs are aching and how much your lungs are hurting, and where all of your attention in your head goes into your body. So you haven't got any space left in your head to think about what you're trying to do with the ball, or this plan that was an amazing plan that you set out before you went on court that you now can no longer execute, because all you can think about is your legs are a bit wobbly and you don't know if you're going to be able to stand up for the next rally. I'm exaggerating a bit, but it was a real eye-opener, and not something that, I really wanted to hear at the time. I don't want someone to tell me. I want it to be a mental issue that I've got that he can help me fix. I don't want him to send me away and go, you need to get, 3 times fitter and then you might have a chance. I didn't want to hear that. But you have to you have to, you know, appreciate it and listen to it and be honest. And he's a psychologist at the end of the day, and he saw what he saw. So it's sort of being able to take that constructive criticism and then go away and actually make the changes.
Okay, Kira's got a question. She was next on my list, and then we'll open it up to the floor if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Kira.
Sorry, I'm just getting it up. What is your normal daily, weekly? Oh, sorry, is it gone?
Don't worry, carry on.
Okay. Sorry. What is your normal like daily, weekly training session usually like?
So generally, I train twice a day, 6 days a week, I'd say, when I was kind of, you know, young pro, starting out through mid-20s. Towards the end of my career, probably from say like late 20s, early 30s, it went to 5.5 days a week. So I generally have a Saturday afternoon and Sunday off. After all of that sort of base work had been done, like they say you need when you're younger. I tried to hit a ball every day. So tried never to kind of do you know, every day within that 5.5 days. So I'd have a day and a half off court. It really changed over my career. I generally, as a pattern, did 2 weight sessions per week. Obviously that depends on your age, but really linking that into being really strict around the fact that the weights was only ever there to aid my squash. So people kind of, you know, obviously social media, Instagram, like people can really get bogged down with becoming what I guess I now see as squash athletes rather than a squash player. And it's really important for you guys to remember that if you're going on the bike, if you're going out for a run, if you're going in the gym and doing a few weights, if you're doing a circuit, how is it all linking into being a better squash player? How is it linking into making your squash game better? So if someone's doing a Zoom workout at home and you've got a set of lunges, it's not just the case of like going through the motions with a lunge. Like, get a racket in your hand and pretend you're just going in and out the front corners and playing that little drop shot. And, you know, there's a like if you're just going through the motions with the lunge, the hand might go on the thigh, the head's looking around everywhere. You're not really firing up the hips. So, you know, how can you think about holding your back leg, using your weight a little bit easier, thinking about maybe like going heel toe on your lunge rather than just putting the foot down, or maybe the heel's coming up, which is a no-no when you're obviously trying to move. But just really imagining like whatever you're doing, how can you imagine that you're doing a squash movement? And if nothing else, that just makes these, especially right now, these Zoom workouts really like a bit more squash specific and interesting. And then, generally, so 2 weight sessions a week. I generally probably have 1 running session, 1 bike session, and then everything else would just be on court, probably depending on how far away I was from a tournament, maybe 1 or 2 matches a week, maybe 1 or 2. Definitely go and see my coach in Harrogate, which was like an hour away, and try and get on court with him once a week. And really keep it interesting. But always the thing I think that's important is I always had my week planned out, because if it's there and it's in writing, you know, even now I'm retired and, you know, we're in lockdown, I try to think, right, I'm going to get out for a run then, and I'm doing a Zoom workout then, and because it makes you a little bit more accountable, and it's a lot harder to miss those sessions if you've got them planned in and you're accountable for what you've got written down.
Nice. Okay, so should we open that up to the floor? Does anyone have any questions?
Laura, I've got a question. Hi, it's Deepak. How did you, when you played, how do you cope with playing with a left-hander? Did your tactics suddenly change on court?
Yeah, it does. And I hated playing left-handers, to be honest. Sorry if there's any left-handers. You're a nightmare to play. It's just a totally different pattern. And I think actually left-handers don't enjoy playing left-handers, do they either? It's really tough. So generally, I tried to have that tactical plan of like basically sticking the ball as much as I could in the what would be my forehand back corner, their backhand back corner, trying to get the ball in behind. It really depends on the left-hander, because the difference is that they can defend a lot better from sort of like behind the service boxes on their forehand side. And so you've just got to be really, really careful that you don't sort of put the ball there and kind of just wait for them to hold it. Probably the left-hander I struggled with the most was, when I say struggled, like Annie Au. I didn't struggle with it. I probably beat her more than she beat me, but because she would be a unique player if she was a right-hander, because she was so severe on the volley and the drops. And whenever I saw her at tournaments practicing, she would just be practicing drops for hours and hours and hours. And I'd be bored watching. I don't know how she used to do it. It was, and then you wonder why she's got such a good drop shot. It's not luck, is it? It's like hours and hours of practice. So, it's knowing that left-hander is still going to have individual weaknesses. So with Annie, who was a left-hander, it was about trying to find that weakness in the backhand back corner for her. But then because she was quite short in stature and the way that she moved was, it was difficult for her to get up from the front to the back. So I always thought about trying to make the court long, which works for a right-hander as well, but you're trying to get the ball in behind the left-hander on their backhand. And then if you can get the ball in short quite quickly to make the court really long. But yeah, it's difficult and it helps massively. And this was something, if I knew I was playing Annie or another left-hander in the first round of a tournament, I would try and find a left-hander to practice against. And, there's no point in pretending that you'll be okay on the day. Like, try and replicate playing someone of that skill. And that goes for someone who is a shot player. It goes for a hard hitter. The amount of times I'd, call a guy up because I was playing Gohar and be like, she smacks the ball so hard at me all the time. I need to practice against this. I need to be able for it to not be a shock. So it's a really good training aid to try and find people of certain styles who you've got on, you can go and play and practice against.
Good, thanks.
I have a two-part question which might be useful. So what advice would you give to these guys if any of them are thinking about becoming a squash professional? And part two of the question is, when did you kind of really commit to the decision or realize that you were capable of becoming a squash player as a career?
Yeah, I think my advice would be now. I mean, it's a little bit different when I was pro, but when I was starting out, it would be just try and watch as much as you can. Squash TV and YouTube is so accessible now that there's no real excuse for kind of not working on kind of like, really looking at players' movements, what players do really well, how they play the game, what you want from your game. And I think linking into that as well, we mentioned it a little bit on the other call, is figuring out your own strengths and weaknesses and trying to play to that and accepting your style of play. So I remember one coach saying to me, the sooner you realize you're not Egyptian, the better, meaning stop trying to go for, cross-court nicks and opening up the court and realize and accept that you're at your best when you play straight and deep. And that's when you're going to protect your movement. And there's a bit of me that was like, well, I don't want to play like that. I want to play like an Egyptian. But then it comes back to what I said before. It's like, do you want to win or do you want to look good? And the sooner I accepted what my actual strengths were and what my weaknesses were and tried to patch holes in that, was when I think I mentally accepted it a little bit better. So I think my advice would be certainly watch the top pros. Secondly, figure out what your own strengths and weaknesses are, and then watch the top pros and try and maybe find someone who is of that style, because there's so many different styles. And then how do they play? What do they do? Is that something that you could kind of copy and base your game on? I think if you talk to any pro, myself included, we've all got people we grew up watching going, I want to be like them. And sometimes the easiest way to learn is to just copy and to pretend you're playing like them. I even used to, during my career, used to imagine that I was Nick Matthew playing his forehand volley drop because it was unbelievable. And I wanted to play it like that. And there was pictures at the end of my career where DP would send me a still shot and it would, me and Nick would look exactly the same. And I used to think, I want to play it like Nick Matthew plays it. And it helped me loads. And then probably the third thing would just be to really try and solo, really get on court. You know, obviously I made the point there with Annie, but the best players in the world who have the best ball control, it doesn't happen by accident. It's because they love the game and they get lost and they solo and they practice and they practice and they practice and they practice. And it's really important to learn the dimensions of the court, learn the angles of the court and do it on your own. And I think those would probably be my three main things. And just, you know, from my own journey, I was a fairly good junior and did fairly well, and but never really knew I wanted to be pro until I probably got to about 17. And I was doing my A levels, and it was basically decision time. Do I go to university or do I give it a go on tour? And I thought, well, I'll just give it a go. You know, it might be my only opportunity to do that. So deferred my uni place and set out on tour, and then never went to uni. It went quite well. And obviously there's sticking points throughout your career where you're not moving on as quickly as you want to, or not improving as quickly as you want to, but generally kind of never really looked back after that first year on tour, and I made quite a big improvement. So yeah, there's no rush. You know, just keep working hard, and maybe the opportunity might present itself to give it a crack.
Awesome. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one question.
Right.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced, both as a junior and when you were playing on the circuit?
As a junior, I think some of the biggest challenges I faced were nerves. And actually that fed into my early senior career as well. And, you know, I've actually sort of relived this a bit because I'm in the process of writing a book, which is hopefully going to come out in the next, well, it's ready, but obviously with COVID just sort of sat on it a little bit. And it's been really interesting sort of going back over a bit of my early sort of starting out. And I think I had quite a strict upbringing. My dad expected a lot of me, and a consequence of that was that I used to worry a lot about losing. I used to worry that I was going to let him down and let the family down, and that everything would be a bit rubbish if I lost, and it added quite a lot of pressure on. So probably one of the biggest challenges was starting to, you know, kind of change that mindset of playing for me a little bit more, and also in my early senior career trying to figure out how to handle nerves and disappointment, because there was a lot of matches in my early career that I lost because I was so nervous, because I wasn't playing well and I wasn't moving freely, because I was almost like confined by all these nerves. And it's really important to say that, you know, there was a lot of tough times through my career. Alongside that, obviously every athlete has injuries as well. That was probably also a really tough part, but it's accepting that injuries are part of the game. And luckily I never had anything too ridiculously serious. Probably the worst one was a pretty bad ankle injury, which kept me out maybe like 3 months, which, you know, over a career is not that bad, although it felt really bad at the time. And linking into that, I think the reason that I was quite injury free was because I was really, really very good at doing the right things. I always warmed up, I always cooled down, I always did all of my like little exercises that the physio gave me when I had little niggles, and I kept up with really regular massage, really regular physio. Obviously I'm training 6 days a week, like I just said, so really important to keep on top of your body even when you're young and you don't feel like there's a chance that you're going to get injured. It pays off later down your career. So yeah, challenges in terms of injury, but that can definitely be helped by trying to prevent injuries, and also dealing with nerves as well, which was a big thing, and definitely something that you can work towards, understanding why you get nervous and working through that.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one last question, if I could.
Yeah.
So it's more about, as you were as a junior, what was your experience like as a county player, and what were the best bits?
Yeah, so I mean, I obviously started out like everybody else, just trying to, you know, just playing at my local club and trying to be the best junior at my club. And Then obviously got selected for the county, and I just remember it being a huge deal when I got my first Lancashire tracksuit, and it was like some amazing looking velvet purple number that I wouldn't be seen dead in now, but I absolutely loved it at the time. And it was a real honor, and how fun as well. Like, it's just really good fun to be able to pull on a tracksuit with 5 other girls and travel away for a day without your parents, or maybe like most of your parents, and have fun. And I really enjoyed that. And it was a big thing. And there's a lot of players who never went pro, who never went on to kind of play on the pro tour or get their ranking high, and they're still playing now to this day because they had such a good time at county level and they really enjoyed it. So whether your aspirations are to, play on the pro tour, or whether they're just to get as good as you can be or represent the county or your region, or, if it is your country, then there's always like having those little goals and something to aim for. Like I said, at first it was trying to be the best in my club, and then the best in the county, and then I ventured over to Yorkshire to try and beat some of the Yorkshire girls because they were really good, and then eventually down south because the southern girls were really good, and was always just trying to take that next step. And it's important to have little goals like that. So yeah, it meant a lot to represent the county. And just because you now see at the end of my career everything that I achieved and all those big titles, it's important to recognize that there's always little steps along the way and little goals. And I never thought in a million years when I was your age that I would have been a world champion and world number 1, but it's sort of like those little steps along the ways, little processes, little habits, they all come good in the end if that's something that you want.
Can I ask one, please?
Yeah, Michael, sure.
When you were younger, what thoughts in mind did you have to keep on pushing in training?
Like I said, I think a lot of it was a little bit kind of trying not to upset my dad, which is really tough. Everyone's not going to have that, but I guess it's that sort of like nurture nature debate of, not only did I really want to kind of, win because I knew it would make my family happy. There's also something in me that kind of felt a little bit guilty if I missed the training session, even when I was really young. And that, I don't know if that, I'm assuming that's not the case for everybody. Some people are just like, nah, I'm not going to bother today. Whereas I was, I'd say, oh, I'm not going to bother today, and then feel really guilty about it. So ended up doing it anyway. So I guess for me, it was just keeping, I always tried to just keep those little goals, little processes. I kept motivated by constantly thinking about, where I wanted to be. Like, so whether it was the best in my club or best in the county, had people who were really honest with me, who I trusted, who would say, you won't improve until you do this with your game, or until you change that technically, or whatever. And that was the same all the way through my senior career. It's, whether you're a junior or whether you're a senior, you're always just trying to get to the next thing. And, Danny used to say to me, you can't have the goal to be, I want to go and win the tournament, because I'll only be happy if I win the tournament, because only one person ever comes out and wins the tournament. Like, you can get to the final and have a great event, and if you've not won the tournament, it's a disappointment. So while you can maybe set yourself the goal of, I want to be world number 1, I want to be number 1 in England, I want to be number 1 in my county, setting that goal and writing it down and closing the book and putting it over there is like, right, that's done. I know that's what I want to achieve, but it's over there now. Now I have to deal with the little processes to get me to that goal. And that's what I think, having the weekly plan set out and knowing what you're going to do each day, little things, eating well, training well, getting hits set up a lot in advance, stretching well, cooling down well. They're all little habits that take a lot of time to build up, and you can do them now as a junior, and you also need to keep doing them as you get older as well. So I think motivation comes from processes and having clear goals of what it is that you'd like to achieve in the future. And that's really personal for you. Like, it might not be that you want to be a world champion. It might be that you want to beat a certain player. Okay, that's your goal, but how are you going to do that? And that's what becomes your motivation, because you know how and why you're competing in every session.
Thank you.
Nice.
Okay, I think we've got time for possibly one last question. If not, we will draw to an end. Everyone?
Did you have a question, Jerry?
How do you mentally prepare yourself for a game?
Yeah, I guess it's a really good question. I guess firstly, I think really importantly is obviously trying to set out a game plan for that game. And for me, I always wrote it down, because I think that when you write things down, it sort of stops it being completely muddled in your head. So setting a game plan, writing it down. I think like voicing any issues as well that you've got. Like I said, I used to get really nervous. And the one thing I perhaps realized as my career went on was the more I sort of can voice that I'm nervous. So whether I say it to a coach or Danny or whoever it was who was with me at a tournament, I'm a bit nervous today. Oh yeah, why are you a bit nervous? I don't know. I think I'm a bit worried I'm going to lose. Oh yeah, why do you think? I don't know. Like, and I sometimes just talking and getting it out, and then it settles you down so that you haven't got those worries when you step on court. There's nothing worse. And I was saying in the last session, like the psychologist once said to me that if you think about like nerves and emotions and worries as a football that you're trying to keep below water, imagine when you're in a swimming pool and you've got a ball that you're trying to keep below the surface, and it's quite strong, isn't it? It pops you up. You can hold it down for so long, and then eventually it's going to, you're going to run out of strength or get tired or whatever, and it's going to break through the surface and smack you in the face. And what you don't want is for that ball to smack you in the face when you're mid-match. You want to have dealt with those emotional issues that are trying to break through before you step on the court. Because at some point you're going to either run out of strength or your mind's going to go to something else if you forget about the ball, and then you can't do anything when you're on court. So preparing for a match for me was about a game plan. It was about dealing with any issues that I had like mentally and emotionally before I went on court. It was about preparing really well in terms of like a warm-up, making sure I'd eaten the right way. I'm a bit of a stickler for routine. So I had a really good set warm up that started like an hour before. I used to get down to the club, have a little coffee, write my plan down, and then start my warm up with about 40 minutes to go, which included getting changed and going through my process. And I realized that, my warm up itself was probably about 20 minutes. But when I gave myself 40 minutes, it was like from 40 minutes out, I was switching on to game mode. So a lot of that time would just be spent either in the changing rooms, getting changed, music on, warm up, 2 or 3 lengths of just walking, thinking about what I was trying to do, what I wanted to do with my opponent when I got on court. Whereas if I just had 20 minutes, it was really just a physical warm up without those little gaps of like freedom to be able to think about what I was going to do when I went on court. So I guess what I'm saying is like that 40 minutes became a mental and physical warm up rather than just a physical warm up, which is probably ridiculously intense for you guys to think about. But maybe you might just add 5 minutes on to think, actually, I don't really give myself a chance to warm up. And then if it's okay to sort of add on, no, you didn't ask this question, but it came up in the last group about how do you figure out a game plan if you've never played someone before, or if you don't know and you can't get a video of them, or you don't know what you want to do. And I just wanted to sort of link in with that's probably firstly understanding yourself, coming back to that brand of your own squash. What do you do really well and what do you not do well? So for me, if I was playing an opponent I'd never played before, it was always, okay, I know I'm at my best when I hit the back corners well and I volley. And they're my 2 things. So that's what I always stepped on court with if I'd never played someone before. Then I always used the knock up as a way to try and get some sneaky insight. So I'd be looking at like technical issues that they've got in the knock up. Have they got a bit of a weird backhand? Have they got a weird forehand? you know, is their movement a little bit suspect? You know, I'm deliberately putting in a little boast, and, you know, they might not run up to it and it might not be anything, but if they put in a little boast and they sort of run in and maybe don't balance quite well in that forehand front corner, you're like, oh, I've got a little bit of an insight there. Maybe I'll try that in the match early on and see if it's, you know, kind of a bit of a suspect area that I can expose. Very simply, are they a left-hander or a right-hander? And then that adapts your plan. You know, put a few lobs up. Firstly, do they volley it? If not, then, you know, you're going to use a lot of height, because it's going to be a really good way to get it over their head. If they do volley it, are they strong on the volley up there, or are they going to give you a weak return for you to look at? So I just think it's important, again, to sort of say that you can get a lot of information from a knock-up, even if it's just a really basic game plan that's just down to you when you step on the court, that then can layer on with the things that you learn by watching your opponent in that first, you know, it's 5 minutes that, you know, again, take the blinkers off and don't just get in your own head, but look at your opponent and see what they're good at.
Also, when you train, do you tend to listen to music?
When I'm training?
Yeah.
So like particularly on the bike and when you're running, you know, it's a really good way, I think, to get a little bit more out of yourself, isn't it? Like, we all know how much of an emotional pick-me-up, you know, listening to some good music can be. I do, however, probably have a little bit of a but there, because I was always really encouraged to not listen to music when I was solo practicing, which is different, because I think it's really important that you, particularly depending on your headphones, I mean, there are all these big ones now, or I've even got the pods that are like sound noise cancelling, and it's awful. Like, to be able to not hear the ball on the wall or on your strings is really tough. So I would be careful of maybe listening to music while solo practicing, but absolutely in warm-ups or physical sessions or little pick-me-ups that are going to give you that little bit of extra energy when you need it. In training, they're the things that can give you that extra 5% more out of yourself, aren't they? So yeah, you know, if you can take both of that on board, maybe.
Great, thank you so much, Laura. Can I just say a massive thank you for coming online and on a Sunday and doing this great session for us. That's all we have time for, everyone. I hope you find that really useful. Thank you so much. Vicky, anything administrating wise to add?
So we'll be organising another session in the next 5 to 6 weeks. So
next 5 to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Be in touch.
Cool. All right, well, we'll see you on the...
It's been been really nice to kind of see some faces and get on, and, you know, see some different faces as well. And, you know, just, you know, you guys are doing a great thing. Not every county is doing this, so, you know, well done, you know, just for getting together and getting things done. And I hope it's really helped, and good luck with everything. If you do have any more questions, you know, always feel free to reach out on, you know, I'm on all the social media and stuff. I'm pretty good at getting back to people, so you know, it's always there if you need it.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, guys. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Have a great weekend, guys.
And you, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right.
That was great,
There were
Laura,
3.
thanks.
Yeah.
Nice. That was great.
Tried to pitch that at a bit of a low. I think it was a little bit of a better level, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was some stuff I thought, gosh, if I'd have said it, like, you know, you can just tell, like you said, obviously not quite at county level. You don't want to be going too in depth, but I thought it was actually really good, because it was kind of a bit of a different session, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How was it different to the first? Sorry, I couldn't make it this morning. I was looking after my daughter.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't know it was going to be different. It was just obviously when you guys came on and said they're at that level where they're kind of, because your region's so strong, maybe the players that would be on kind of Aspire level they're not quite getting the opportunity, are they? So I think we just went a little bit more in depth into a little bit more of the mental side, a little bit more of the tactical side, everything that we touched upon in that session, but probably just that little bit more in depth, and maybe looking more